Jaime, Chapter 1. An east wind blew through his tangled hair, as soft and fragrant as Cersei's fingers. He could hear birds singing and feel the river moving beneath the boat, as the sweep of the oars sent them toward the pale pink dawn. After so long in darkness, the world was so sweet that Jaime Lannister felt dizzy. "I am alive, and drunk on sunlight," a laugh burst from his lips, sudden as a quail flushed from cover. "Quiet," the wench grumbled, scowling. Scowl suited her broad, homely face better than a smile. Not that Jaime had ever seen her smiling. He amused himself by picturing her in one of Cersei's silken gowns in place of her studded leather jerkin, as well dressed a cow in silk as this one. But the cow could row. Beneath her rough spun brown breeches were curls like cords of wood, and the long muscles of her arms stretched and tightened with each stroke of the oars. Even after rowing half the night, she showed no signs of tiring, which was more than could be said for his silent cousin Sir Cleos, laboring on the other oar, a high, big, strong peasant wench to look at her. Yet she speaks like a one high-born, and wears long sword and dagger. Ah, but can she use them? Jaime meant to find out as soon as he rid himself of those fetters. He wore iron manacles on his wrists and a matching pair about his ankles, joined by a length of heavy chain no more than a foot long. You'd think my word as a Lannister was not good enough. He'd japed as they bound him. He'd been very drunk by then. Thanks to Catelyn Stark. Of their escape from Riverrun he recalled only bits and pieces. There had been some trouble with the Galloway, but the big wench had overcome him. After that they had climbed an endless stair around and around. His legs were weak as grass, and he stumbled twice or thrice until the wench lent him an arm to lean on. At some point he was bundled into a traveller's cloak and shoved into the bottom of a skiff. He remembered listening to Lady Catelyn command someone to raise a portcullis on the water gate. She was sending Sir Cleos Frey back to King's Landing, with new terms for the Queen, she declared in the tone that brooked no argument. He must have drifted off then. The wine had made him sleepy, and it felt good to stretch, a luxury his chains had not permitted him in the cell. Jaime had long ago learned to snatch sleep in the saddle during a march. This was no harder. Tyrion is going to laugh himself sick when he hears how I slept through my own escape. He was awake now, though, and the fetters were irksome. "My lady," he called out, "if you'll strike off these chains, I'll spell you at those oars." She scowled again, her face all horse teeth and glowering suspicions. "You'll never wear your chains, Kingslayer. You figured to row all the way to King's Landing, wench. You will call me Brienne, not wench. My name is Sir Jaime, not Kingslayer. Do you deny that you slew a king? No. Do you deny your sex? If so, unlace those breeches and show me." He gave her an innocent smile. "I'd ask you to open your bodice, but from the look of you that wouldn't prove much." Sir Cleos fretted. "Cousin, remember your courtesies. The Lannister blood runs thin in this one." Cleos was his aunt Ganna's son by the duller demon Frey, who had lived in terror of Lord Tywin Lannister since the day he wed his sister. When Lord Walder Frey had brought the twins into the war of the side of Riverrun, Sir Aemon had chosen his wife's allegiance over his father's. Castle Rock got the worst of that bargain, Jaime reflected. Sir Cleos looked like a weasel, fought like a goose, and had the courage of an especially brave Ewe. Lady Stark had promised him release if he delivered her message to Tyrion, and Sir Cleos had solemnly vowed to do so. They'd done all the de-vowing went down in the cell. Jaime most of all. That was Lady Catelyn's price for losing him. She had laid the point of the big wench sword against his heart, and said, "Swear that you'll never again take up arms against Stark nor Tully. Swear that you'll compel your brother to honor his flesh to return my daughter safe and unharmed. Swear on your honor as a brother of the King's Guard. Swear by your sister's life, and your father's and your son's, by the old gods and the new, and I'll send you back to your sister. Refuse and I'll have your blood." He remembered the prick of the steel through his ranks as she twisted the point of the sword. I wonder what the High Septon would have to say about the sanctity of oath sworn while dead drunk, chained to a wall with a sword pressed to your chest. Not that Jamie was truly concerned about that fat fraud, or the gods he claimed to serve. He remembered the pale Lady Catelyn had kicked over his cell, a strange woman to trust her girls to a man with shit for honor. Though she was trusting him as little as she dared, she's putting her hope in Tyrion, not in me. Perhaps she is not stupid after all, he said aloud. He's scared her to get wrong. I'm not stupid nor deaf. He was gentle with her, mocking this one would be so easy, there would be no sport of it. I was speaking to myself and not to you. It's an easy habit to slip into a cell. She frowned at him, pushing the oars forward, pulling them back, pushing them forward, saying nothing. As glib of tongue as she is fair of face, by your speech I judge you nobly born. My father is Selwyn of Tarth, by the grace of the gods, lord of Evenfall. Even that was given grudgingly. Tarth, Jaime said, a ghastly large rock in the narrow sea, as I recall. And Evenfall is sorted to Storm's End. How is it that you so rob of Winterfell? It is Lady Catelyn I serve, and she commanded me to deliver you safe to your brother's Tyrion at King's Landing, not to bandy words with you. Be silent. I've had a belly full of silence, woman. Talk with Sir Cleos then. I have no words for monsters. Jaime hooted at their monsters hereabouts, hiding beneath the water perhaps in that thick of willows. And me without my sword, a man who would violate his own sister, murder his king, and fling an innocent child to his death deserves no name. Innocent, the wretched boy was spying on us. All Jaime had wanted was an hour alone with Cersei. The journey north had been one long torment, seeing her every day unable to touch her, knowing that Robert stumbled drunkenly into her bed every night in the great creaking wheelhouse. Tyrion had done his best to keep him in a good humor, but it had not been enough. You'll be courteous as concerns Cersei's wench, he warned her. My name is Brienne, not wench. What do you care what a monster calls you? My name is Brienne, she repeated doggedly as a hound. Lady Brienne, she looked so comfortable that Jaime sensed a weakness, or would Sir Brienne be more to your taste? He laughed. No, I fear not. You can trick out a milk cow in a proper cranet and charm front, and bard her all in silk, but that doesn't mean you can ride her into battle. Cousin Jaime, please, you ought to not to speak so roughly. Under his cloak Sir Cleans wore a shortcut quarter with the twin towers of House Frey and the golden lion of Lannister. We have far to go. We should not quarrel among ourselves. When we quarrel, and do it with a sword. Cause I was speaking to the lady. Tell me, wench, are all the women on Tarth as homely as you? I pity the man. If so, perhaps they do not know what real women look like. Living on a dreary mountain in the sea, Tarth is beautiful. The wench grunted between strokes. The sapphire owl is called. Be quiet, monster. Unless you mean to make gag you. She's rude as well, isn't she? Cause Jaime asked Sir Cleos, though she has steel in her spine. I'll grant you not many men dare name me monster to my face. Though behind my back they speak freely enough, I have no doubt. Sir Cleos coughed nervously. Lady Brienne had those lies from Catelyn Stark, no doubt. The Starks cannot hope to defeat you with swords, sir. So now they make war with poisoned words. They did defeat me with swords, you chinless cretin. Jaime smiled knowingly. Men will read all sorts of things into a knowing smile, if you let them. Has cousin Cleos truly swallowed this kettle of dunk, or is he striving to ingratiate himself? What do we have here? An honest mutton head or a lick of spittle? Sir Cleos patted badly on. Any man who believes that a sworn brother of the king's guard would harm a child does not know the meaning of honor. Lick spittle, if truth be told, Jaime had countered Rue heaving Brandon Stark out of the window. Cersei had given him no end of grief afterward. When the boy refused to die, he was 7, Jaime. She berated him. Even if he understood what he saw, we would have been should be able to frighten him into silence. I didn't think you'd want, you never think, if the boy would take and tell his father what he saw. If he had pulled her into his lap. If he wakes, he will say he was dreaming. We'll call him a liar, and should worst come to worst, I'll kill Ned Stark. And then what do you imagine Robert will do? Let Robert do as he pleases. I'll go to war with him if he must. The war for Cersei's cunt, the singers will call it. Jaime let go of me, she raged, struggling to rise. Instead, he had kissed her. For a moment she resisted, but then her mouth opened under his. He remembered the taste of wine and cloves on her tongue. She gave a shudder. His hand went to her bodice and yanked. Tearing the silk so her breast fell free, and for a time the Stark boy had been forgotten. Had Cersei remembered him afterward and hired this man Lady Catelyn spoke of to make sure the boy never woke. If she wanted him dead, she would have sent me. It is not like her to choose a catspaw who would make such a royal botch of the killing. Downriver, the rising sun shimmering as the wind whipped surface of the river. The south shore was red clay, smooth as any road. Smaller streams fed into the great and rotting trunks of drowned trees clung to the banks. The north shore was wild. High rocky bluffs rose 20 feet above them, crowned by stands of beech oak taller with every stroke of the oars. Long before they were upon it, he knew that it stood abundant. Its weather stones were grown with climbing stones. When the wind shifted, Sir Cleus helped the big wind job run the sail, a stiff triangle of striped red blade and blue canvas. Tully colors, sure to cause them grief if they encountered any Lannister forces on the river. It was only the sail they had. Brienne took the rudder. Jaime threw out the leeward, his chains rattling as he moved. After that they made better speed, with wind and current both favoring their flight. "We could save a deal of travelling if you limit to my father instead of my brother," he pointed out. "Lady Catelyn's daughters are in King's Landing. I'll return with the girls or not at all." Jaime turned to Sir Cleus. "Cousin, lend me your knife." "No." The woman tensed. "I'll not have you armed." Her voice was unleading as stone. "She fears me even in irons, Cleus. It seems I must ask you to shave me. Leave the beard, but take the hair off my head." "You'd be shaved bald," asked Sir Cleus Ray. The realm knows Jaime Lannister as a beardless knight with long golden hair. A bald man with a hilty yellow beard may pass unnoticed. "I'd sooner not be recognized while I'm in irons." The dagger was not as sharp as it might have been. Cleus hacked away manfully, sawing and ripping his way through the mats, then tossing the hair over the side. The golden claws floated on the surface of the water, gradually falling astern. As the tangles vanished, a loud one crackling down his neck. Jaime Curran crushed it against his thumbnail. Sir Cleus picked others from his scarf and flicked them into the water. Jaime dusted his head and made Sir Cleus wet the blade before he let him scrape away the last inch of yellow stubble. When that was done, they trimmed back his beard as well. The reflection in the water was a man he did not know. Not only was he bald, but he looked as though he had aged 5 years in that dungeon. His face was thinner, with hollow under his eyes and linens he did not remember. "I don't look as much like Cersei this way. I hate that." By midday, Sir Cleus had fallen asleep. His snores sounded like ducks mating. Jaime stretched out to watch the world flow past. After the dark cell, every rock and tree was a wonder. A few wandering shacks came and went, perched on tall poles that made them look like cranes. Of the folk who lived there, they saw no sign. Birds flew overhead or cried out from the trees along the shore, and Jaime glimpsed a silvery fish knifing through the water. Tully trout, there's a bad omen, he thought, until he saw worse. Around the floating logs they passed turned out to be dead man, bloodless and swollen. His cloak was tangled in the roots of a fallen tree. His color unmistakably Lannister crimson. He wondered if the crows had been someone he knew. The folks of the Trident were the easiest way to move goods or men across the riverlands. In times of peace they would have encountered fisherfolk in the skiffs, grain barges being floated on steel merchants, selling needles and bowls of clothes from floating shops. Perhaps even a gaily painted mummer's boat with quilted sails of half 100 colors, making its way upriver from village to village and castle to castle. But the war had taken its toll. They sailed past villages but saw no villagers. An empty nest, slashed and torn and hanging from some trees, was the only sign of fisherfolk. A young girl watering her horse rode off as soon as she cleaned the sail. Later they passed a dozen peasants digging in the field beneath the shell that one tower house. The man gazed at them with dull eyes and went back to their labors when they decided the skiff was no threat. The Red Fork was wide and slow, a meandering river of loops and bends dotted with tiny wooded islets, and frequently choked by sandbars and snags that lurked just below the water's surface. Brienne seemed to have a keen eye for the dangers, though, and always seemed to find the channel. When Jaime complimented her on her knowledge of the river, she looked at him suspiciously and said, "I do not know the river. Tarth is an island. I learned to manage oars and sail before I ever sat a horse." Sir Cleus sat up and rubbed at his eyes. "Gods, my arms are sore. I hope the wind lasts." He sniffed at it. "I smell rain." Jaime would become welcome a good rain. The dangers of river run were not likely in his place in the Seven Kingdoms. By now he must smell like an overripe cheese. Cleo squinted down river. Smoke. A thin grey finger crooked them on. It was rising from the south bank several miles on, twisting and curling. Below, Jaime made out the smouldering remains of a large building and a live oak full of dead women. The crows had scarcely started on their corpses. The thin rose cut dipped into the soft flesh of their throats, and when the wind blew, they twisted and sighed. This was not chivalrously done. said Brienne when they were close enough to see it clearly. No true knight would condone such wanton butchery. True knights do wars every time they ride to war, wench, said Jaime, and do wars, yes. Brienne turned the rudder toward the shore. I'll leave no innocent to be food for crows. A heartless wench. Crows need to eat as well. Stay out to the river and leave the dead alone, woman. They landed upstream of where the great oak leaned out over the water. As Brienne lowered the sail, Jaime climbed out, clumsy in his chains. The rat folk filled his boots and soaked through the ragged breeches. Laughing, he dropped to his knees, planted his head under the water. It came up drenched and dripping. His hands were caked with dirt, and when he rubbed them clean in the current, they seemed thinner and paler than he remembered. His legs were stiff as well, unsteady when he put his weight upon them, as two bloody, long, inhospitable dungeons. Brienne and Cleus dragged the cliff on the bank. The corpses hung above their heads, ripening in death like foul fruit. One of us will need to cut them down, the wench said. I'll climb, Jaime waded ashore, clanking, just get those chains off. The wench was staring up one of the dead women. Jaime shuffled closer with small stutter taps, the only kind the foot-long chain permitted. And when he saw the crude sign hung about the neck of the highest corpse, he smiled. They lay with lions, he read. Oh, yes. This woman was most unchivalrously done. But by her side, not mine. I wonder who this wore this woman. Tavern wenches, said Sir Cleosphere. This was an inn. I remember it now. Some man of my escort spent the night here when we last returned to Riverrun. Nothing remained of the building but the stone foundation of tangled clothes being charred black smoke and rose from the ashes. Jaime left Brothos and host to his brother Tyrion. Cersei was the only woman he had ever wanted. The close peasant, some of my lord father's soldiers, it would seem. For her served them food and drink. That's how they earned the traitor's scholars with a kiss and a cup of ale. He glanced up and down the river to make certain they were quite alone. This is Brackenland. Lord Jonas might have ordered them killed. My father burned his castle. I fear he loves us not. Maybe Mark will keep us work, said Sir Cleus, or the wisp of the word Bertrand Dorian. Though I heard he kills only soldiers, perhaps a band of loose bolt-toothed Northmen. Bolton was defeated by my father on the Green Fork, but not broken, said Carl Fleos. He came south again where Lord Tywin marched against the force. The wars at Riverrun was that he'd taken Harnacle from some Amory lords. Jaime liked the sound of that. Not at all. Brienne, he said, granting the courtesy of the name in the hopes that she might listen. If Lord Bolton holds Harrenhal, both of the Trident and the King's Road are likely washed. He thought he saw a touch of uncertainty in her bleak blue eyes. You are under my protection. They need not kill me. I shouldn't think that would trouble them. I'm a good fighter as you, she said defenselessly. I was one of King Renly's chosen 7 with his own hands. He cloaked me with the striped silk of the Rainbow Guard. The Rainbow Guard, you and 6 other girls, was it? A singer once said that all maids are fair and silk, but he never met you, did he? The woman turned red. We have graves to dig. She went to climb the tree. The lower limbs of the oak were big enough for her to stand upon. She got up the trunk. She walked amongst the leaves, dagger in hand, cutting down the corpses. Flies swarmed around the bodies as they fell. The stench grew worse with each one she dropped. This is a deal of trouble to take for horse, so Cleopas complained. What are we supposed to dig with? We have no spades and I will not use my sword eye. Brienne gave a shout. She jumped down rather than climbing to the boat. Be quick, there's the sail. They made what haste they could, though Jaime could hardly run and had to be pulled back up into the skiff by his cousin. Brienne shoved up with an oar and raised her hurriedly. Sir Cleus, I'll need you to row as well. He did as she bade. The skiff began to cut the water a bit faster. Currently, wind and oars all worked for them. Jaime sat changed, peering upriver. Only the top of the other sail was visible. With the way the red fork loped, it looked across the fields, moving north behind a screen of trees while they moved south. But he knew that was deceptive. He lifted both hands to shade his eyes. Mud red and watery blue, he announced. Brienne's big mouth worked soundlessly, giving her the look of a cow chewing its cud. Foster, sir, the inn was soon behind them, and they lost sight of the top of the sail as well. That meant nothing. As the pursuers swung around the loop, they would become visible again. We hope the noble tunnels will start to bury the dead horse, I suppose. The sprocket returning to his cell did not appeal to Jaime. Tyrion could seem something clever and all that occurs to me is to go with them with a sword. For the good part of an hour, they played seek with the pursuers, sweeping around bends and between small wooded isles. That's when they're starting to hope that somehow they might have just been left behind the pursuit. The distant sail became visible again. Sir Cleus paused his stroke, the others take them, he wiped sweat from his brow. Row, Brienne said. That is a river galley coming after us. Jaime announced after he'd watched for a while. With every stroke it seemed to grow a little larger. 9 oars on each side, which means 18 men more if they crowded on fighters as well as rowers. and larger cells than ours. We cannot outrun her. Sir Cleus froze at his horse. 18, you said. 6 for each of us. I want 8, but these bracelets hinder me somewhat. Jamie held up his wrist. Unless the Lady Brienne would be so kind as to unshackle me. She ignored him, putting all her effort into a stroke. We had a half a nice start on them. Jim said, they've been rowing since dawn, resting 2 hours at a time. They'll be exhausted. Just now the sight of our sail has given them a burst of strength. But that will not last. We are to kill a good many of them, Sir Cleus gate. But there are 18, at the least, more likely 20 or 25. His cousin groaned. We can't defeat 18. Did I say we could? The best we can hope for is to die with swords in our hands. He was perfectly sincere. Jaime Lannister had never been afraid of death. Brienne broke off rowing. The sweat had struck strands of her flax-colored hair to her forehead, and her grimace made her look homelier than ever. "You're under my protection," she said, her voice so thick with anger that it was almost a growl. He had to laugh at such fierceness. She's the hound with teeth, he thought, or would be if she had any teeth to speak of. Then protect me, Wench, or free me to protect myself. The galley was skimming down river, a great wooden dragonfly. The water around her turned white by furious action of her oars. She was gaining visibly, the men on her deck crowding forward as she came on. Metal glinted in their hands, and Jaime could see both as well. Archers. He hated archers. At the prow of the onrushing galley, a stocky man with a bald head, vertigreen armbelts, and brawny arms. Over his mail he wore a solid white short coat with a weeping willow embroidered in pale green, but his cloak was fastened with a silver shroud. River runs captain of guards. In those days Sir Robin Ryjon had been notably tenacious fighter, but his day was done. He was unaged with hospitality and had grown old with his lord. The boats were 50 yards apart. Jaime cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted back of the water, "Come to wish me Godspeed, Sir Robin." "Come to take you back, Slayer," Sir Robin laughed loud. "How's that you've lost your golden hair? I have to blind my enemies with the chain of my hand. It worked well enough for you." Sir Robin was unambiguous. The distance between skiff and galley had shrunk to 40 yards. "Throw your oars and your weapons to the river, and no one need to be harmed." Sir Cleus twisted around. "Jaime, tell him we were freed by Lady Catelyn and extended to captives lawful." Jaime told him, for all the good a dead kidney's tongue does not rule in Riverrun. Sir Robin shouted back. 4 archers got into position on either side of him. 2 standing and 2 kneeling. Cast your swords into the water. "I have no sword," he returned, "but if I dare to stick it through your belly and hang the balls off those 4 cravens." A flight of arrows answered him, one thread into the mast to pierce the sail, and the 4th missed Jaime by a foot. Another of the red falls broad loomed before them. Brienne angled the skipper across the brand. The yacht swung as they turned, their sail creaking as it filled with wind. Ahead, a large island set in the midstream. The mention flowed right to the left, cut off a ran. Between the island and the high bluffs of the north shore, Brienne moved the tiller and the skiff she had left, sail rippling. Jaime watched her eyes, pretty eyes, he thought, and calm. He knew how to read a man's eyes. He knew what fear looked like. She's determined, not desperate. 30 years behind, the galley was entering the band. So Clear stuck the tiller, the wench commanding King said, "Take or keep us off the rock." "As my lady commands," and was not a sword, but the blade could break a man's face if well sunk. The shaft could be used to parry. So Clear shoved the oar into Jimmy's eyes and scrambled off. They crossed the head of the island and turned sharply down the cutoff, sending a wash of water against the face of the bluff as the boat tilted. The island was densely wooded, tangled with oaks and tall pines that cast deep shadows across the rushing water, hiding snags in the rotted trunks of drowned trees. To their left, the blast shore. They passed from sunlight into shadow hidden from the galley's view between the green wall of the trees and the stony-eyed, green-brine bluff. A few moments respite from the arrows, Jaime thought, pushing them off a soft, submergible. The skiff rocked. He heard a soft light, and when he glanced around, Brienne was gone. A moment later, he spied her again, pulling herself from the water at the base of the bluff. She waded through a shallow hole, scrambled over some rocks, and began to climb. Sword Clear's goggle mouth open. "Fool," thought Jaime. "Ignore the one," she snapped her cousin's dear. They could see the sail moving behind the trees. The river galley came into full view at the top of the cutoff. 25 years behind. Her bosun heard the shake as she came around. Half a dozen arrows took flight, but all went wide. Motion of the 2 boats was giving the archers difficulty, but Jaime knew they'd soon enough learn to compensate. Brienne was halfway up the cliff face, pulling herself from handhold to handhold. Rhaegar's sure to see her. Once he does, he'll have this moment to bring her down. Jaime decided to see if the old man's pride would make him stupid. "Sir Robin," he shouted, "hear me for a moment." Sir Robin raised a hand and his archers lowered their bows. "Say what you will, Kingsley, but say it quickly." The skiff swung through a litter of broken stones as Jaime called out, "I know a better way to settle this. Single combat, you and I. I was not born this morning, Lannister, but you're likely to die this afternoon. I'd like nothing better. By hand command to bring you back alive as possible, bowmen. Single them all, notch, draw, loop." The range was less than 20 yards. The archer could scarcely have missed. But they As the longbows, a rain of pebbles cascaded down around the small tones rattled on the desk of the house, and the splashes on both sides of the road. Those who had wits enough to understand raised their hands just to hold on to the side. Sat on the top of the bluff, saw Rob and shouted in dismay. The stone tumbled through the air, and the larger piece snapped the most, tore through the sails, and two of the archers flying into the river. Crushing the leg of a rower, his bent over his rope. The rapidity with which the galley began to fill with the water suggested the small frigate had plunged through her hull. The oarsmen's screams echoed up the bluff, while the archers flailed wildly in the current. From the way they were splashing, neither man could say, and Jimmy laughed. By the time they emerged from the cutter, the galley was wandering amongst pools, eddies, and snags. Jaime Lannister had decided that the gods were good, so Robin and his thrice-damned archers would have a long way to walk back to River. He was rid of the big homely wench as well. Could have not planned it better myself once I'm free of the sirens. So Cleos raised the shower when Jerry looked up. Brienne was lumbering along the mist so well ahead of them, having cut across a finger of the land while they were following the bend in the river. She threw herself over the rock and looked almost as grateful as she wanted in the dark. It would have been ungracious to hope that she wouldn't smash her head on a stone. So clear stones escaped toward her, thankful that James who had his oar. One good thing when she comes better let go, I'll be free of her. Instead, he found himself stretching the oar out over the water. Brienne grabbed hold. She pulled her in as she helped her into the skiff. Water ran from her hair and dripped from her soul and clothing to pull on the deck. She's even uglier wet. Who would have thought it's possible? Your blood is super wet, she told her. We could have sailed on without you. I suppose you expect me to thank you. I want none of your thanks, there. Swore an oath to bring you safe to King's Landing. And you actually need to keep it. Jaime gave her his brightest smile. Now there's a wonder. Now there's a wonder.